Welcome to Threshold Stories, crossing thresholds one story at a time. I'm your host, Jeff Gora.
And today, Andrew is our guest. Andrew, say hello to everybody.
Good evening, everyone, or whenever you listen to this.
Right. So I'm going to kind of go through a mini monologue about how this happened. So, guys, I didn't know Andrew until we chatted online, phone call, text, you fill in the blank with anything else. But if anybody knows anything about my coaching, you know that I historically do not take the swim very seriously, right? It's 9 to 11% of a triathlon. Half of my customers, athletes, are duathletes. And the number of people who truly have a need for what I would call advanced swim stuff is pretty negligible. But the truth is, I didn't have any place to turn people to. So I met Andrew and I liked what I saw and I read and I asked him, would you like to come in to Threshold to be the person who I point people to for all things swim? And he said, well, absolutely, I want to do that. That's how I grow my business at the same time. That said, when I was looking at your resume, you reminded me an awful lot of what it was like when we built this house we're in. So I live in a big log cabin, Andrew. And pretty much every subcontractor we hired could do some of the other jobs. Like my framer, he knew electrical and plumbing and stuff like that. My electrician had done framing work. So there was a bunch of overlap. But specific to you, you're showing up with the intention of being a swim-focused guy. Oh, by the way, you have strength and conditioning certifications, and you're USA Triathlon certified as a coach as well. So no bike, no run, no weight room stuff for you in your focus of what you're trying to do to make money and make the world a better place. How did you end up with swim as being your focus?
Sure. So I actually, I played a bunch of sports when I was a kid, and I got actually pretty seriously into running like in middle school, and then just basically I kind of got hurt, and I ended up swimming on the recommendation of a friend's parent, and it just kind of clicked with me, and so I kind of got better and better at that, and then just whenever we get better at something, we just tend to try to do more of that. We kind of go towards where our successes are, and then I ended up swimming in college, and I started to just get really interested in how people got better. And so I was really focused on, reading anything I could, learning everything I could. And generally speaking, I was not super thrilled with kind of the swimming education, the swimming literature by swimming. It seemed like it wasn't, quite as progressive as some other fields. And so I started getting interested in strength and conditioning. And then, through school, I had the opportunity to do some internships in strength and conditioning, and after I graduated, I was able to do one with the Cleveland Browns strength and conditioning, and so it was just for me an opportunity to learn more about training, because I feel like the principles, whether it's any sport, they're all pretty much the same. Sometimes the specific applications are a little bit different. Sure. So that's where I kind of got involved in that, and then however, at the same time, I realized that being an actual strength coach, you don't really have much control over anything. So the sports coaches are pretty much running the show, and you basically do whatever they tell you to do, whether you believe
you're second fiddle all the time. That's right.
So I had really no interest in that, because I just saw that as a losing end from the start. But it was really easy to maintain the certification. I still have a huge interest in it, and so I kind of kept that going. And then in terms of triathlon, I kind of became interested in it just because, people knew I was a swimmer and knew I was a swim coach. And so they were like, hey, can you help me out? And so it just kind of became something that I was interested in. And then I've also kind of came to the realization that I knew a lot about swimming. And as much as I knew about swimming, there were other people that knew a lot about running or biking or even triathlon as a whole, which is probably a fourth piece of that. And so I realized that, there's a lot of people that are reasonably skilled at several different things, and you've probably never heard of them, but you've heard of the people that are really, really good at one thing. And so it makes sense to me to just kind of focus on the one aspect that I felt like I already had invested a lot in being really good at. And so I kind of wanted to capitalize that. And so I stayed with that.
So most people have some sort of idol they look at, but you didn't come into this until later. Earlier you said you got into it from a friend's parents' recommendation. So you didn't grow up focused on. Who did you have as swimming idol, if any?
I guess I would say once I got kind of into the sport. I remember Anthony Irvin was a swimmer that was
Hmm.
pretty excited about, and a lot of the guys that were really good technically, you could just like almost like they were the models for what great swimming could look like Ian Thorpe and Peter Van Hoogenbond, some of these guys. I just was kind of like fascinated by like how they could make it look so easy and so
Right.
fast and just,
Yeah, that's
you
certainly
know,
not me. I certainly can't make it
yeah,
look easy. So, speaking of looking easy and not looking easy, I'm
yeah,
imagining one of the questions you're probably going to get is you're in Charlottesville, Virginia, right?
yeah,
So, how can you help somebody with their swimming if they're in Nashville, Tennessee, or in where I'm at, near Charlotte, North Carolina? That's
right,
got to be a question you get.
sure. So when people breathe, that it causes all sorts of problems with their alignment, and that's usually fairly easy to fix. The other thing that people don't do is so swimming fast, you need to be able to be comfortable in the water and find balance in the water, and a lot of that comes from using your lungs really well. And most
Mm.
people never bother to learn that, but you learn that as a kid if you grow up swimming. But most adults that come to it, because a lot of triathletes, come to the sport later in life and they never had any
Right.
swimming experience. And so they start to try to learn freestyle technique, but they don't have that,
Hmm.
that underlying base. And so I think for a lot of people, learning how to get comfortable in the water is a huge starting point. And
Cool.
then I used to do swim camps at my last coaching job. And part of that was literally watching thousands of videos in slow motion for kids. And then you start to see what
Mm.
you start to be able to pick things up pretty quickly. And so even with some pretty terrible video, just
Okay,
some
that's an
iPhone
answer people
videos.
can live with. I think they can
Yeah.
that well, GoPros are now are so cheap anyway.
Yeah. But
So
you don't even need that.
I would say, from my perspective, one of the most common fear factors I get that prevent people from going either from sprint to standard or to half iron distance or whatever is they have that fear of open water swimming,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So what do you do with folks who have the fear of open water swimming?
Sure. So I think part of it is identifying what the real issue is. And so for some people, just not being able to see the bottom is a real,
Right?
freaks them out. And so the solution to that
Put them in
is
Kona
just basically,
immediately, where you can
yeah,
see the bottom the whole swim.
yeah. Well, that's one option. The other option is to literally practice swimming with your eyes closed when your head's in the water, and then just open them up when you breathe. And all of a sudden,
Oh, okay.
you don't even know. And that might sound scary to like it's real easy to swim straight. That's not, you'll figure that out in 2 seconds. And so that's one way to just get comfortable with that. Some people can't really handle the waves or the people, that freaks them out. And so the solution to that is just, you just need a swimming buddy, and you kind of need to like swim on top of each other. Not, just swim real close to each other and just do your workouts like that. And so with most fears in life, it's just kind of graded exposure, and you need to do it in a safe
Mm.
way that's not doesn't freak you out. And so those are, two pretty common causes of open water fear, and you can do that in a pool, and things like that, and that's just a starting point, and it's about problem solving.
So I would say about 10 or 25% in that window of the people who come to me, when I sit down with them and have a serious intake question, I go through, what do you want to be when you
Yeah,
grow up?
right.
Ironman shows up a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah,
And for most of them, that concept of a 2.4 mile open water swim is a phrase they can say, but how to
right,
in that, just it's that category of insurmountable. 112-mile bike ride, it's 111 plus one,
right,
right? I can teach that, right? Same
right,
goes with a marathon.
right,
2.4 miles in open water is
right,
overwhelming. What do you tell people when they come to you and say, "Hey, I want to do an Ironman. Help me get the swim down"?
right. So I think the most people's instinct with any goal that they have is to work harder, and
Mhm.
so they think it's going to be really physically hard, and so they expect every time they get in the water to be physically hard. But if you're going to
Right.
swim for 2.5 miles, and that could be, you know an hour to way more than an hour depending on your
Mm.
swimming ability, it needs to be really easy. You have to just practice learning how to swim as easy as possible, and then just focus on the sustainability part of it. And like I talked about earlier with kind of the flotation stuff, like if you can't be comfortable in the water, you're never going to make it. And
Mm.
so I think most people try to swim too hard, and it's more about just being able to swim forever. And so it's about finding a way to swim as easy as possible, and then just slowly adding volume and time to that. The flip side of that is it might take a little bit longer than what someone wants to hear or wants to do, but
Mhm.
there's a much higher probability that they'll actually get there versus, they're just trying to do high intensity stuff. you can't sustain that for 2 hours. And
Right.
especially when there's the fear of like legitimate fear of drowning.
So let me jump to an evolutionary biology question, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at us as a mammal, right, breathing,
Yeah.
because we have really large lungs based on our body size, right?
Right.
And you compare us to other species that attempt to get in the water and move, like a tuna or a dolphin, we're somewhere between suck and awful. And
Yeah.
I don't know, that needle moves around. Yet you have a passion for it, right? Yet I'm going to call it a God-given propensity to share stuff with people. What's your swimming philosophy, considering that biologically we're not very good at it?
Yeah. So I guess like it's kind of funny. So whenever like someone would ask me like what superhero power I would want to have, is I'd always want to fly, because I just like, it's total freedom.
That's a good one.
And so to me, when swimming clicks, it feels like you're just flying, because it can be effortless. You're totally supported. You're weightless. And so, but that's all relative too. So if you're a terrible swimmer and you get slightly better, it's going to feel like you're flying to you. And so I think it's, yeah, we're terrible in the big scheme of things, but we're terrible at a lot of things physically.
Oh,
But it
for
still feels
sure.
pretty cool. It feels pretty cool to get better at it. And so I think it's an area that you can see tremendous improvement. And because of that, I think that that's super rewarding. And it just, when swimming clicks, and that's, again, it's relative to what you're used to, it's effortless, and it's just awesome.
So I would say one of the more common conversations I have with people who are age groupers in the triathlon space is this I'm going to call it like Macbeth, to be or not to be.
Right.
It's to wetsuit or not to wetsuit. Therein lies the question. How do you hold people's hands through that wetsuit conversation?
I think it's one of those things that just it's an added boost, and whether it's not going to solve, there's no miracle. It's just a boost, and whether you use it now or you use it later, it doesn't really matter. You just, it's just going to make you a little bit better. And I don't think there's necessarily a problem with that at any point. However, at the same time, you can't use it like as a crutch. And if you feel like you can only swim with a wetsuit,
like a buoy.
Yeah, exactly. Buoys can be useful for certain things, but if you have to do every single lap of every single time you swim with a buoy, it's now a crutch. And so I think there's no issue with racing in it. However, if you feel like you can't race in it, I think that's potentially an indication that there's other places you can improve.
So I'm gonna call this my last question, but it's the one that's it's burning in my mind. When I have people run on a treadmill or ride a stationary bike, it's the same mentality struggle.
Right.
Meaning your terrain doesn't change, but you're physiologically changing, right? You're dumping calories, and all that goes with it.
Right.
When you get in a pool to swim, I mean, even the most elite of swimmers are spending a ton of time in the pool compared to an elite runner who's not spending a ton of time on a treadmill, or you are an elite cyclist who's not spending a lot of time on a trainer, but they are.
Right.
How do you personally keep sane, doing 17,000 laps in a month inside of a swimming pool? What do you do?
Well, so there's two things. One, I think running on a treadmill or running on a bike is infinitely worse than swimming back and forth in a pool, because at least you can count the laps, and at least it feels like you're making progress.
Point taken. Shots touche, as the French would say.
It's still bad, but it's not quite as bad. I would say that what keeps me sane is that it's always every stroke and every second I'm trying to work on something, and I'm engaged in what I'm doing, and I'm paying attention to what I feel, and that's with running or anything else I do. It's you're just in the moment trying to focus on what you're doing and trying to get better at it. And so to me, that's not really boring, because it's a process of paying attention and feeling things and trying to work through things. And so every day you're going to have a little bit of something's going to be that's going to grab your attention. You're going to have a little problem to solve. And even with the swimmers that I still work with, at a collegiate level, like I never really understand why they're bored, because there's always something to work on. They may not be physically, they may be uncomfortable, but that I understand. But there's always something to work on and something to pay attention to, as opposed to, I'm just trying to get the mileage in or burn the calories or develop the fitness or whatever it is.
All right. So couple of fast fire questions for you. Ready?
Yeah.
It's 5 seconds or less on each answer. Steak, fish, or Impossible Burgers?
Good fish.
Good fish. Fair enough. Broccoli or Brussels sprouts?
Ooh, it depends on how they're cooked, but most of the time I would say broccoli.
Dude, you're way too picky for me. And always with it. So I'm going to put some stuff at the bottom of the podcast here on how to reach out and contact you and all that goes with
Great.
it. What's a reasonable engagement? Say somebody says, Andrew, I like what I heard. I want to get better at swimming. I need you. How long do I need you? Give me an answer to that question. People are going to ask me that.
Yeah, sure. So it depends a little bit on, I guess, on how you go about things and where you're at. So for some people, it can be kind of a one-time thing where they send me some video and I show them, what's up and what they need to work on and some of the skill or some of the exercises they can use to address that. And if it's someone that is really good at kind of self-motivated, self-initiated, can kind of get things done and has a really good awareness of their own training and how to set things up, that might be all they need because they just need a confidence in what they need to do. Other people that are, want more, structured, here, tell me like what to do, like design a practice for me, that could take 4 to 6, 4 to 8 weeks, something like that.
Sure.
And then depending if, there's certainly value in going beyond that. And I think with anything, it's, even if you have the secret, you know exactly what to work on, you have the exact tools to do it, everything just takes time because, just like you were trying to play the piano, like you might have the world's best teacher, but, you still have to learn the skills and it still takes time. So I think that, with anything, there's no shortcuts.
Cool.
It just kind of depends on what your situation is.
Cool. Well, with that, Andrew, I'm going to say our time has expired. I appreciate this, and I hope everybody who's listening can justify giving you a buzz because
Awesome.
God knows I'm not going to be a good swim coach, especially when compared to folks like you. Thanks for being on.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this chapter of Threshold Stories, crossing thresholds one story at a time. Ready to cross more thresholds with me in 2 weeks. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. You can find me on LinkedIn or on my Facebook page at Jeff Gora Team USA.